I went to the gala to surprise my husband. Instead, I watched
My husband spent weeks preparing a pitch for a mystery CEO. He had no idea he was about to walk into a boardroom and pitch, to me.
And haddles. At home, I was the simple wife who cooked his meals and scrubbed his floors. He didn't know that the bookkeeper he cheated on was—
He didn't just cheat on me. He stole confidential data from my laptop to impress his boss. But he forgot one thing. I own the company he was stealing from.
Before we dive into the story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a part. And let me know in the comments below, have you ever stayed in a relationship hoping the other person would change? Let's get started.
The crystal champagne flute felt biting and cold against Natasha Bradford's palm, a stark contrast to the humid, perfumed air of the Grand Meridian Hotel ballroom. She stood partially obscured by the shadow of a massive marble pillar, her posture rigid, her eyes fixed on a scene that felt like a hallucination. There, under the cascading light of the chandeliers, was her husband, Thomas. He was kissing another woman on the cheek. It wasn't the polite air-kiss greeting of business acquaintances. It was a kiss that lingered, intimate and possessive, speaking of shared secrets and darkened rooms. Thomas was wearing the silver watch Natasha had bought him for their 6th anniversary. She remembered the purchase vividly, how she had saved for 3 months, putting aside small amounts of cash from her bookkeeping allowance so that the purchase wouldn't appear on their shared bank statements. She had maintained the ruse of being a struggling bookkeeper so perfectly, and seeing that watch now, gleaming on his wrist as his hand rested comfortably on the small of another woman's back, made bile rise in her throat. Natasha had come to the Regional Commerce Gala on a whim, following a suggestion from her executive assistant, Beverly, to network quietly. She had never expected to find her husband here. He had explicitly told her he was working late at the office, buried under quarterly reports. The woman beside him was striking, younger, perhaps 28, with auburn hair falling in carefully styled waves. She wore a green silk dress that Natasha knew, with a single glance, cost more than Thomas's monthly salary at his mid-level marketing job. Or at least, more than the salary he claimed to have. They had stopped discussing finances in depth years ago, right around the time he had stopped asking her about her day with any genuine interest. "Tom, you simply must introduce me to your lovely companion," a voice boomed. Natasha watched as a silver-haired man in a bespoke suit approached the couple. It was Richard Worth, CEO of Worth Industries. Natasha's breath hitched in her throat. She stepped deeper into the shadows, making herself small, a skill she had perfected over 7 years of marriage. "Richard, good to see you," Thomas said, his voice booming with a confidence he rarely displayed at home. He shook the older man's hand vigorously. "This is Christine Moore, my partner." Partner. The word hung in the sterile air like a toxic cloud. "Christine, this is Richard Worth," Thomas continued. "Christine is brilliant. Tom has told me so much about your company," Christine added, her voice smooth and practiced. "I'm excited about the potential collaboration between our firms." "Our firms?" Natasha's hand trembled so violently she had to set her champagne glass down on a passing waiter's tray before she dropped it. "And what does your wife think about all the late nights you've been putting in?" Richard asked with a knowing conspiratorial wink that made Natasha's stomach turn. Thomas didn't even flinch. He laughed, a sound that used to make Natasha feel safe but now sounded like scratching metal. "My wife wouldn't understand the complexity of what we're building, Richard. She's simple. She's more comfortable with domestic things. Domestic life suits her." Christine touched Thomas's arm, a gesture that was both comforting and claiming. "Not everyone is cut out for the business world," she purred. "It takes a certain drive." Natasha pressed her back against the cool marble, willing her heart to slow down. 7 years. 7 years of cooking his favorite pot roasts, listening to his endless complaints about his bosses, and supporting his every career pivot. 7 years of keeping her own massive success quiet because he had seemed so fragile when they met. He had been beaten down by a previous ex who constantly compared him to her wealthy father. Out of love, Natasha had hidden Bradford's solutions. She had hidden the fact that the bookkeeping business she ran from their spare room was actually a tech consulting empire worth $43 million. She had hidden her real estate portfolio, her stocks, and the reality of her power, all to make him feel big. She had enjoyed the simplicity of their home life, the grocery shopping, the Friday night movies. She thought they were happy in that simplicity. But watching him now across the ballroom, laughing at something Richard said, he looked happier than she had seen him in months. He looked alive. Natasha turned and walked toward the exit, her heels silent on the plush carpet. She was an expert at being invisible. It was how she gathered intelligence in business meetings where men assumed she was an assistant rather than the person buying their company. The cool night air hit her face as she stepped outside. She bypassed the valet stand, ignoring the expectant look of the attendant, and walked 3 blocks to where she had parked her modest 10-year-old Honda. Thomas didn't know about the Tesla in her private garage downtown, or the BMW she used for client meetings. He only knew this car, the one she bought used when they were newlyweds. Sitting in the driver's seat, she caught her reflection in the rearview mirror. 34 years old. Successful beyond most people's wildest dreams. And completely, utterly alone in her marriage. Her phone buzzed on the passenger seat. It was a text from Thomas. Working late, baby. Don't wait up. Love you. She stared at the glowing screen. 3 lies in 11 words. That had to be a record. Another text came through immediately after, this one from Beverly. How's the gala? Meet anyone interesting? Natasha's fingers hovered over the screen. Her eyes hardened. She typed back. Very interesting. I'll tell you Monday. Can you schedule a meeting with Patricia Caldwell for first thing? Patricia was the best divorce attorney in the state. Beverly's response was immediate. Done. Everything okay? It will be, Natasha typed. And as she put the car in gear, she realized she meant it. Natasha drove home to the suburban house that Thomas believed stretched their budget to the limit. In reality, she had paid cash for the property 5 years ago, setting up a dummy mortgage payment structure so he wouldn't suspect her wealth. The house had tripled in value thanks to a neighborhood development project she had quietly funded through a subsidiary. But Thomas remained oblivious to the gold mine they lived in. Inside, the house was silent and stale. The breakfast dishes Thomas had promised to wash sat crusting in the sink. His coffee mug had left a ring on the counter. In the living room, his shoes were kicked off by the couch, his tie draped over a chair, and his briefcase lay open on the floor. Walking through the rooms, Natasha saw them differently now. This wasn't a home. It was a stage set. It was a carefully constructed diorama where she performed the role of the unambitious, simple wife while her real life happened in a glass and steel tower downtown. She went into the bedroom and opened their shared closet. On his side, she noticed things she had previously ignored. New clothes. Designer labels he couldn't possibly afford on his reported salary. She pulled out a jacket, checking the inner pocket. A receipt from Le Monde, an upscale French restaurant, dated 2 weeks ago. The same night he claimed to be having pizza with his team. She dug deeper. Jewelry store receipts. Wine shops. Boutiques. Thousands of dollars spent on a life she wasn't invited to. Her phone rang. It was Thomas. She answered, her voice steady, betraying nothing. Hey, honey. Hi, baby. Just checking in, he lied, his voice smooth. This project is taking forever. I'll probably be another few hours. In the background, she could hear the faint murmur of the gala, the clink of glass, music. That's fine, she said. I'm just reading. Take your time. You're the best. I don't know what I'd do without you. The words, once comforting, now felt like sand in her mouth. Love you, he said. Drive safe, she replied, ending the call without reciprocating the sentiment. She wasn't sure she loved him anymore. She wasn't sure she knew him. Natasha went to her home office, the small room Thomas thought she used for her few bookkeeping clients. She opened her laptop, a high-powered machine he assumed was a budget model, and logged into her secure network. The dashboard of Bradford Solutions sprawled across the screen. Contracts, employees, revenue streams. She opened a new folder and labeled it Exit Strategy. Thomas came home at 2 a.m., smelling of expensive perfume that wasn't hers. Natasha feigned sleep, feeling the mattress dip as he slipped into bed, relaxing into the comfort of his deception. She lay awake in the darkness, listening to the rhythm of his breathing, and began to calculate. By Sunday morning, while Thomas slept off his night of work, Natasha was deep into the financial records of their marriage. She had always kept meticulous documentation. Their assets were clearly delineated. The prenuptial agreement she had insisted on, which Thomas had signed jokingly, claiming he was marrying for love, not money, protected her business interests completely. He had no idea he had signed away rights to a multi-million-dollar empire. She listed the facts. House, her name. Cars, hers. Investments, hers. Thomas legally owned his personal items, a car 3 payments away from repossession, and she discovered upon accessing his credit report, $8,000 in credit card debt. He had opened 3 new cards in 6 months to fund his affair. Her phone rang. It was Beverly. "I have news," her assistant said, her voice tight. "Remember the RFP that went out last month for the vendor management system upgrade? The $50 million contract." "I remember," Natasha said. "What about it?" "You'll never guess who submitted a proposal. I was reviewing the applicant list for the presentation schedule." Beverly paused. "Sterling Marketing Solutions. Thomas's company." Natasha froze. "Go on." "They're scheduled to present on Wednesday. The presentation team includes a Thomas Wright." Is that your Thomas?" A perfect, terrible clarity clicked into place in Natasha's mind. "Yes," she said slowly. "That's my husband. Should I remove them from consideration? Conflict of interest." "No," Natasha said, a plan forming instantly, cold and sharp as a diamond. "No, keep them in. In fact, ensure they present. I want to be in that room." "Natasha, are you sure? That's going to be." "I'm very sure. Also, move my meeting with Patricia Caldwell to tomorrow morning. I want the divorce papers ready by Wednesday." After hanging up, Natasha walked to the window. Thomas's leased car sat in the driveway, another expense he couldn't afford, meant to impress Christine. She heard him stirring upstairs. Soon, he would come down, kiss her cheek, and lie about last night. He would act the part of the weary provider, unaware that the simple bookkeeper downstairs held the keys to the kingdom he was desperately trying to enter. When Thomas appeared in the doorway, Natasha was typing on a spreadsheet, looking appropriately focused on humble work. "Morning," he croaked, scratching his head. "You're up early." "Lots to do," she said, not looking away. "Coffee's in the pot." He kissed the top of her head. "You're the best. Sorry about last night. The meeting ran so late." "It's fine," she said. And it was. Because now she knew exactly how this story would end. Monday morning arrived with a gray, persistent drizzle that blanketed Portland. Natasha was at Bradford Solutions headquarters by 6 a.m., 2 hours before her staff arrived. The building, a 12-story structure of glass and steel, was a testament to her tenacity. Bradford Solutions gleamed in chrome above the reception desk. Beverly was waiting, a stack of folders on Natasha's desk. "Patricia is here," she whispered, closing the office door. Patricia Caldwell, a woman with hair like spun silver and a reputation like a shark, wasted no time. For 2 hours, they dissected the marriage. "The prenup is airtight," Patricia confirmed, tapping a manicured fingernail on the document. "He gets nothing but what he brought in and what he earned. No claim on the business, the real estate, or the investment portfolio. It will be quick and clean." Good, Natasha said. Have the papers ready to be served Wednesday afternoon. I want him to finish the presentation first. Later that morning, Jerome, her head of IT, knocked on her door. He looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot. Natasha, we have a security issue. Natasha looked up from her monitors. What kind of issue? Someone has been accessing the client database without proper authorization. The login credentials belong to a low-level account that shouldn't have that clearance, but they bypass the firewalls using an admin key. Who? That's the thing. The IP addresses trace back to several locations, but they all cluster around the times. Well, the times you were working from home. Jerome swiped his tablet, bringing up a log. And the queries? They are specifically looking for internal pain points, budget caps, and infrastructure maps. The kind of data a vendor would kill for. Natasha felt a chill that had nothing to do with the office air conditioning. Cross-reference the download times with the IP of the Sterling marketing proposal submission. Jerome tapped for a moment. His face went pale. It's a match. The data stolen from our servers forms the backbone of the Sterling marketing proposal. It wasn't just infidelity. It was theft. Thomas had used her laptop, her simple bookkeeping laptop that actually held the keys to her empire, while she slept or showered. He had stolen from his own wife to impress his mistress and win a contract with a company he didn't even know she owned. Lock it down, Natasha ordered, her voice devoid of emotion. Document everything. Every keystroke, every timestamp. If Sterling used stolen data, they are liable. And Thomas. Thomas committed corporate espionage. Tuesday passed in a blur of surreal normalcy. Thomas was in high spirits, buoyed by the stolen data and his secret romance. He insisted on taking her to dinner to make up for his busy schedule. They went to Marcello's, a mid-range Italian place Natasha pretended to love. They sat in a corner booth. Thomas ordered a bottle of wine he couldn't afford and leaned in, eyes shining with manic energy. This presentation tomorrow, Natasha, it's going to change everything. The commission alone is huge. We could finally take that trip you've been wanting. Natasha hadn't wanted a trip. He was projecting. Tell me about the company, she said, swirling her wine. Bradford Solutions. They're a big deal. Huge, Thomas said, puffing out his chest. Tech consulting. Nobody knows much about the CEO. Keeps a low profile. But we've cracked their code. Christine and I, my team, we know exactly what they need. Christine is the colleague you've been working with? Natasha asked, her face a mask of polite interest. Yeah, she's great. Really talented. You'd like her. The audacity was breathtaking. I'm sure she's wonderful, Natasha said. What time is the presentation? 10 a.m. Wish me luck. You'll do great, she said. You seem very prepared. They finished dinner, Thomas paying with a credit card Natasha knew was maxed out. Back home, she let him hold her as they slept, studying his face in the dark. He looked peaceful, completely unaware that he was sleeping next to the architect of his destruction. He whispered, "I love you," in his sleep. Sleep well, she whispered back. Wednesday morning was crisp and clear. Natasha waited until Thomas left the house early to prep with the team. Then she transformed. She shed the soft cardigans and jeans of the bookkeeper and donned her armor, a sharp, burgundy power suit tailored to perfection, stilettos that added 3 inches to her height, and her hair styled in a sleek, professional blowout. She drove the Tesla to work. At the office, the stage was set. "They're here," Beverly messaged at 9:30 a.m. Thomas Wright, Christine Moore, and Gerald Foster, their sales director. "They're in conference room B." "Perfect," Natasha replied. "Let them get comfortable. Bring them coffee. I'll enter at 10 o'clock sharp." She stood in her office, looking out at the Portland skyline. She wasn't nervous. She was focused. The hurt of the betrayal had crystallized into a cold, hard purpose. Thomas wanted a partner with ambition? He wanted a woman who commanded respect? He was about to meet her. The conference room at Bradford Solutions was a masterpiece of intimidation. Floor-to-ceiling glass, a table made of reclaimed polished wood that seemed to go on for miles, and a view that dominated the city. Thomas sat on one side, flanked by Christine and Gerald. He felt good. He felt powerful. He adjusted his tie, glancing at Christine, who gave him a subtle, encouraging smile. They had this in the bag. The data they had acquired was bulletproof. The CEO is running a few minutes late, the assistant Beverly had said. She likes to make an entrance. Gerald checked his watch. 10 a.m. on the dot, he muttered. The double doors at the far end of the room swung open. Thomas didn't look up immediately. He was shuffling his index cards. But he heard the click-clack of confident heels striking the hardwood floor. He heard the sudden intake of breath from Christine. He looked up, expecting a stranger. Instead, he saw his wife. But it wasn't the wife he knew. This woman wasn't wearing the stained apron or the comfortable yoga pants. She was wearing a suit that screamed power. Her hair was sharp, her makeup flawless, her expression unreadable. She walked to the head of the table, the seat of authority, and placed a single folder down. Thomas's brain short-circuited. His first thought was that she was lost. Why is Natasha here? Did she bring me my lunch? Good morning, Natasha said. Her voice wasn't the soft, accommodating tone she used at home. It was the voice of a CEO. Resonant, commanding, and icy. Thank you for coming. Please sit. Thomas remained half standing, his mouth slightly open. Christine looked between them, confusion warping her features. Gerald, oblivious, smiled professionally. Ms. Bradford, a pleasure to meet you finally. Your assistant mentioned you prefer to stay behind the scenes. Ms. Bradford. The name hit Thomas like a physical blow. He looked at the wall behind her. The logo. The stylized B. Bradford Solutions. Natasha's maiden name. Mr. Wright, Natasha said, locking eyes with him. Her gaze was dead. Please sit down. We have a presentation to get through. Thomas sank into his chair, his legs suddenly made of jelly. Natasha? He whispered. Christine leaned in, her whisper frantic. Do you know her? Thomas couldn't speak. His throat had closed up. Mr. Wright seems to be having a moment, Natasha said coolly. Mr. Foster, why don't you begin? Gerald, sensing the tension but not understanding the source, launched into the pitch. Sterling Marketing Solutions is honored to be considered comprehensive proposal. Addresses all of Bradford Solutions' unique needs. Natasha didn't look at the slides. She stared at Thomas. Every time Gerald mentioned a unique insight or a hidden pain point, Natasha's eyebrow raised slightly. 10 minutes in, she raised a hand. Stop. Gerald froze. Miss Bradford. I'd like to understand something, she said, leaning forward. How did Sterling Marketing gain such detailed insight into our internal server architecture? This slide, specifically the one about our legacy database migration issues. That information isn't public. In fact, it's only available on our internal encrypted network. Gerald stammered. Well, we conducted thorough research, industry analysis. Public records? Natasha asked. She opened the folder in front of her. So, you didn't access our client database without authorization 3 weeks ago? You didn't use stolen login credentials to view proprietary information. Gerald turned pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Mr. Wright does, Natasha said. Don't you, Thomas? The room went silent. Thomas looked like a trapped animal. He realized with horrifying clarity that the laptop he had borrowed, the one he thought contained recipes and grocery budgets, was the gateway to the company he was trying to swindle. "I think we should reschedule," Gerald said, standing up abruptly. "Sit down," Natasha barked. The command cracked like a whip. Gerald sat. "We are going to finish this. I want to see exactly how much of my company's confidential information you are presenting back to me as your own genius." For 20 excruciating minutes, they went through the slides. Every page was an indictment. Christine was shaking now, looking from Thomas to Natasha, the pieces falling into place. When it was over, Natasha closed the folder. "Thank you. Very informative." She turned her gaze to Thomas. "I have one question before you leave, Mr. Wright. Does your wife know you're here?" Christine flinched. "Does she know," Natasha continued, "that you took time off from your marriage to pitch a business contract using information you stole from her company?" "His wife." Christine's voice was a whisper. "I'm his wife," Natasha said. "We've been married for 7 years. Thomas, you're still wearing the watch I gave you for our anniversary." Thomas looked at his wrist. The silver watch caught the light. "Oh my God," Christine breathed, standing up. "You said you were separated. You said the divorce was almost final." "You've been lying to both of us," Natasha said. "Though lying to me is worse, considering you've been stealing from me as well. Corporate espionage is a felony, Thomas." Gerald grabbed his briefcase. Sterling Marketing had no knowledge of any impropriety. If Mr. Wright obtained information illegally, that is his responsibility. "I'll keep that in mind when my legal team contacts you," Natasha said. "You're dismissed." Gerald fled. Christine stood there, looking at Thomas with pure disgust. "You told me she was simple. You said she had no ambition. She hid it," Thomas yelled, finding his voice in his anger. "She lied to me. She hid who she was." "I kept my professional life private," Natasha said, standing up. She loomed over him. "I never brought another person into our marriage. I never stole from you. I never made you feel small. Don't ever contact me again." Christine spat at Thomas and walked out. Thomas and Natasha were left alone in the vast, silent boardroom. "Natasha, we can fix this," Thomas pleaded, his confidence shattered. "Fix it." Natasha walked to the door and held it open. "Thomas, my lawyer will be in touch. Get out of my building." Thomas walked out of the conference room and into the open plan office. He felt the eyes of dozens of employees on him. They knew. The silence was heavy, filled with judgment. He pressed the button for the elevator, staring at his reflection in the brushed steel. He looked like a man who had just fallen off a cliff. His phone buzzed. A text from his boss. "See me immediately. My office." Another buzz. An email from building security at Sterling Marketing. Badge access revoked. The elevator doors opened, and he stepped into the lobby, feeling like a ghost. The sun outside was blinding. He had walked in that morning thinking he was about to become a star. He was walking out unemployed, likely divorced, and potentially a criminal. Back in the conference room, Natasha stood still until the adrenaline began to fade, leaving her hands trembling. Beverly appeared with a glass of water. "That was intense," Beverly said softly. "It was necessary," Natasha replied, taking the water. "Is Jerome ready with the security report?" "He's sending it to Patricia Caldwell now. The logs, the video footage of him entering the building using your pass card. It's all there." Natasha nodded. She went back to her office and threw herself into work. She had a department head meeting at 2 p.m. and an investor call at 4 p.m. She used the complexity of business to wall off the wreckage of her personal life. At 3:30 p.m., Patricia Caldwell called. "The process server just delivered the papers to Thomas," she reported. "Or tried to. He was being escorted out of his office building with a box of his things. He was fired." "Good," Natasha said. She felt a cold, grim satisfaction. He tried to refuse the papers, Patricia continued. Then he just sat down on the curb and stared at them. Natasha, he's called your office 20 times. Keep sending him to voicemail. Later that evening, Natasha's phone blew up. Beverly sent a screenshot. Christine Moore had posted a statement on her professional networking page. Reminder to always verify relationship statuses. Lessons learned the hard way. Trust but verify. The post was viral. Christine was painting herself as a victim, the woman deceived by a lying husband. She's spinning the narrative, Beverly said. People are sympathizing with her. Let them, Natasha said, though it stung. She was lied to, yes. But she also knew he was married and didn't care enough to dig deeper. She's doing damage control. Natasha decided not to go home that night. The house in the suburbs was tainted. She instructed Beverly to have movers pack Thomas's things, everything he owned, and put them in the garage. She would stay at her pied a terre in the city, a sleek apartment Thomas didn't know existed. That night, alone in her apartment, Natasha ate takeout Chinese food standing at the counter. She felt hollow. She had won the battle, destroyed her enemy, and protected her company. But the silence in the apartment was deafening. She realized that for 7 years, she had been performing a character. Now, the character was dead. She had to figure out who Natasha Bradford really was when no one was watching. Her phone rang. It wasn't a blocked number. It was Gerald Foster from Sterling Marketing. Miss Bradford. He sounded exhausted. I wanted to apologize personally. We have terminated Thomas Wright. We are withdrawing our proposal. That's not necessary, Natasha said, surprising herself. Your proposal was good. Strip out the stolen data, resubmit using public records, and I will consider it fairly. Business is business. That's very generous, Gerald stammered. But Thomas, Natasha said, her voice hardening, Thomas is personal. And criminal. A knock on her door made her jump. She checked the peephole. It was Thomas. He looked disheveled, his tie loose, his eyes red. He had found her. Natasha, please, he yelled through the wood. I know you're in there. Go away, Thomas, she said through the door. I just want to talk. I have nothing. I lost my job, I have debt, I have nowhere to go. Not my problem. You have to help me. Just give me some money to get an apartment. The audacity took her breath away. You want money? After stealing from me? I didn't steal. I just looked. You committed a felony. Go call your parents. You get nothing. She walked away from the door, leaving him pounding on the wood, his pleas turning into insults, then fading into silence. Thursday morning brought a new reality. Natasha sat in a sterile interview room at the Portland Police Department. Across from her sat Detective Sharon Morrison, a sharp-eyed woman who had reviewed Jerome's evidence file. Walk me through the timeline, Morrison said, the recorder humming on the table. Natasha explained it all. The authorized access. The specific files downloaded. The video footage of Thomas using her stolen keycard to enter the server room while she was distracted. This is airtight, Morrison said, tapping the file. Corporate espionage is a Class B felony in Oregon. Given the value of the data, millions in potential contracts, the DA is going to go hard on this. What happens next? Natasha asked. We issue a warrant. He'll be arrested. Arraigned. Likely given a plea deal if he cooperates. Prison time is a real possibility, up to 5 years. Prison. The word hung heavy in the air. Natasha thought of Thomas, who complained if the cable went out for an hour. Thomas in prison. Do you want to proceed? Morrison asked. Natasha didn't hesitate. Yes. When she returned to the office, the media storm had begun. A tech blog had leaked the story. CEO confronts husband's theft and affair in Boardroom showdown. Reporters were camped in the lobby. Natasha had to use the freight elevator. Beverly met her with a tablet. Forbes is here for your scheduled profile interview. Do you want to cancel? No, Natasha said. I'm not hiding. The interview with Rachel Thornton from Forbes was grueling. Rachel asked about the business, but inevitably, the conversation turned to the scandal. Do you regret hiding your success? Rachel asked. I didn't hide it, Natasha corrected. I kept it separate. I wanted a marriage based on connection, not status. Clearly, my husband needed the status to feel connected. Some are calling your reaction cold, Rachel noted. If protecting my life's work and refusing to accept betrayal is cold, Natasha said, lifting her chin, then yes. I am cold. That evening, Thomas showed up at the suburban house. Natasha was there, overseeing the movers who were boxing up the last of his things. She stood on the porch, the security chain on the door. They're going to arrest me, Thomas wept. The detective called. Natasha, please drop the charges. You made your choices, she said, looking down at him. This is revenge, he screamed, his face twisted. You're punishing me for not knowing. I'm punishing you for stealing, she said calmly. And for the record, Thomas, you never knew me because you never asked. In 7 years, you never once asked me a real question about my dreams. You just loved that I made you feel big. She closed the door. Thomas turned himself in the next morning. The weeks following Thomas's arrest were a blur of legal maneuvers and personal reinvention. Thomas couldn't make the $50,000 bail, so he remained in custody. Patricia Caldwell handled the divorce with ruthless efficiency. Since Thomas was incarcerated and had no assets, he signed the papers without a fight. The marriage was dissolved in record time. Natasha threw herself into her work. The Forbes article came out titled "The Titan in the Shadows." It was a sensation. It painted Natasha not as a victim, but as a brilliant, stoic leader who refused to let personal drama derail her empire. Business boomed. Natasha became an accidental icon for women who had dimmed their light for their partners. She started therapy. She redecorated the house, stripping away the beige safe choices Thomas had preferred and filling the space with bold colors and modern art. She bought the expensive wine. She stopped cooking pot roast. 6 months later, on a Tuesday evening, Natasha sat alone at the bar of the restaurant where she used to take Thomas. Not Marcello's, but the rooftop place downtown she actually liked. She was reading a report on her tablet when a man approached. "I'm sorry to interrupt," he said. He was tall, with kind eyes and sawdust on his sleeve. "I recognized you from the magazine." Natasha Bradford. "Yes," she said, bracing for a pitch or a question about her ex-husband. "I'm Jordan Pierce. I'm an architect. I just wanted to say, the way you handled the server migration for the city project? Genius. I read the technical specs." He didn't mention the scandal. He mentioned her work. "Would you like to join me?" she asked, gesturing to the empty stool. Jordan was different. He was established. He had his own firm. He had gone through an amicable divorce years ago because they grew apart. There was no bitterness in him, no need to prove himself. They talked for hours about structure, design, and the philosophy of building things that last. "I used to build small," Natasha admitted after her second glass of wine, "to fit inside a box." "You can't put a skyscraper in a shed," Jordan smiled. "It breaks the roof." They exchanged numbers. He called the next day. Not to ask for a job, but to ask her to dinner. Natasha hesitated. The trauma of Thomas was still fresh. But Jordan was open. He was transparent. When she told him she was busy with a merger, he didn't sulk. He sent her a congratulatory plant. "You're intimidating," Beverly teased her. "And he likes it." "He's not threatened," Natasha realized. "He's secure." Fall arrived in Portland, turning the city into a canvas of gold and crimson. Natasha stood in her boardroom, the same room where her marriage had ended, presenting record quarterly earnings. The ghost of Thomas Wright was gone, exorcised by success and time. After the meeting, Beverly caught her. "He's here. In the lobby." "Jordan." "No. Thomas. He's out on probation. He asked for 5 minutes." Natasha considered refusing, but she was curious. She nodded. Thomas entered her office. He looked different. Thinner. Older. He wore a cheap suit and looked at the floor. "I'm moving to Seattle," he said quietly. "Living with my parents. I took a plea deal. 2 years probation, restitution." "I know," Natasha said. "I just wanted to say. I read the letter I sent you from jail, but I wanted to say it to your face. You were right. I was insecure. I needed you to be small so I could feel big. And that was my failure, not yours." He looked at her, really looked at her, taking in the office, the power, the woman. "You deserve to be big, Natasha." "Thank you, Thomas. I hope you find someone who can handle it." "I have," she said simply. Thomas nodded, a sad smile touching his lips. He turned and walked out, leaving her life forever. That evening, Natasha hosted a dinner party at her house. Jordan was there, chopping vegetables in her kitchen, completely at ease. He told a joke, and her laugh rang out, rich and genuine. "I have a showing next week," Jordan said, pouring wine. "Will you come? There will be press. We might end up in the papers." Natasha thought about the shadow she had lived in for 7 years. She thought about the pillar in the ballroom. She looked at Jordan, who was looking at her with pride, not envy. "I'll be there," she said. "I'm done hiding." Later, standing on her back porch with Jordan's arm around her, watching the stars, Natasha felt a profound sense of peace. She had built a company. She had dismantled a lie. She had rebuilt a life. She wasn't just a bookkeeper. She wasn't just a wife. She was Natasha Bradford, and she took up exactly as much space as she needed. And finally, it was enough. If you liked the story, please subscribe and hit the like button. Thanks for watching.